Hi, I'm the
Ragebait.
When we last left off in the chronicles of Skipolo's 2,000 player civilization event, my faction, Imperium, had just resolved a conflict involving a land dispute with the leaders of another nation, Phalanx. With the first day down and all the server's pre-event lore mostly being resolved, it was now up to us to make it as far as we possibly could with our progress before the inevitable wars and conflicts consumed the entire world. This collection of events and era of the server's lifespan would not soon be forgotten, so please observe as it unfolds. The Bull Days Journal, Day 2. Today was a fine day indeed. As any other, I spent the majority of today gathering materials and exploring a bit of the server. The plans for Imperium were still being formed, and as such, I was unable to do too much quite yet. I assisted with the others where I could, however. I met a few people who offered me some food and basic tools in exchange for helping them construct their base, and from what I've heard from the folks in Imperium, Phalanx had safely left the area. However, there was one major event this session, one the entire world felt, and one nobody expected to happen this soon. The assassination of the major political leader known as Mudklip, creator of the nation Atlantis, leaving Phalanx with nowhere to go, and most of the Western world in utter shambles. The word is the assassin, a man named Swordmaster Cat, was loosely associated with Hydra, and more or less slew the Emperor of the most powerful nation in the server on a complete whim, being his first major action on the server. Seeing as I don't like to spread rumors too much, however, I'll check in tomorrow and hope everything goes well. Maybe the influx of players from Atlantis will give us some more political power. Who knows? The Bull Days Journal, Day 3. As my first real day on the server with importance, this day started off about as well as it possibly could have. Low on food, but now armed with coordinates for the Imperium base, I ran in their direction and did not stop until I couldn't run any more from hunger, till finally I arrived. A small farming village known by its residents as Sidrus, and one big dream from every member of the very eager group. After rebooting about 100 times to activate my voice chat mod, I was finally able to listen in to a very powerful speech about the day's plans given from our Grand Imperator known as Crafter. I approached a few people and was very quickly acquainted with some of the local residents. A few players by the names of Alexander, CM, Jordan, and Hololight quickly caught my attention and were very fast to introduce me to the land. Please keep their names in mind as they will become important later. I was quickly given some charity from the other members of Imperium, namely more food to keep me going, and they pointed me in the direction of the fabled iron node so I could get myself some iron tools and gear. After getting the all clear from one person who was mining there, I suited up fast, got some more food from the farm, and within minutes I was already approached by a man named Baro Chen, who gave me my first task for the Imperium, getting redstone from a nearby node. I gathered up with a couple others and headed away to a nearby redstone deposit, where we used our pickaxes to mine the entire place clean. Just as we were getting back, however, tragedy struck. Our leader, Crafter, had been assassinated while going over the plans for the nation, surrounded by fellow Imperium citizens, by two other players, both who claimed to be members of Imperium. One of the assassins was killed on the scene, but the other, a player by the name of Lark, got away. This left Imperium in utter shambles. Cosmic, who had previously been the second-in-command to Crafter, was one of two Grand Praetors on the server, took up the mantle of the Grand Imperator, and almost immediately began giving out instructions on how to move forward as a nation. The first step, of course, was going to be bringing Lark to justice, but something was off about Cosmic's leadership style, however. Her cold and calculated demeanor and absolute dismissal of potential problems was in stark contrast to Crafter's more easygoing and charismatic leadership. Either way, it was clear that Imperium would now enter a state of grieving, and its once hopeful and optimistic attitude had now been shattered. We all knew what must be done, and it would involve blood being spilled in the name of Crafter's legacy. I wasn't in the mood for national defense, however, so I did the only thing I knew how to and fucked off and built a home. A man from a neighboring nation who had heard about the tragic assassination of Crafter approached me and claimed to be from a mysterious alliance known as the Northeastern Union, or NEU for short, comprising most nations of the East, including the Order of Phalanx, who we'd previously had trouble with. Either way, it seemed to me that they were on our side, and for that I had to join arms with them. The session ended with me collecting logs for my little jungle hut, but before it did, I heard word that apparently our neighbors had also had some trouble with one nation having an attempted assassination performed on their leader, and another, known as Pinguina, being pillaged completely. These acts were done almost in unison as the assassination of Crafter, as the members of the NEU had been at a meeting when everything had happened, leading all members of Imperium to believe something deeper was going on. To end the day, a stage was held discussing what to do now that Crafter was dead, and the motives behind the attack. Many fingers were pointed. Some of our own, present during the attack but not directly responsible, were accused for not having done more to protect the Imperator. Intel from another nation known as Ragebait Dynasty, leaders of the NEU, and likely the most powerful nation of the East, suggested that the attack may have been coordinated by ex-members of Imperium, forming a new faction known as the Hidden Leaf, who left following the conflict on day one with Phalanx. But the devastating blow to our nation's security, in only 3 days my trust in the event began to weaken. I did not play on day 4. However, from what I heard, a funeral was held in Crafter's honor, and a memorial was erected on the border of Strageris. During this time, Cosmic had personally investigated further into Crafter's mysterious death, and found 2 members of Imperium named Ninja and Happy guilty of treason against the nation, despite them not being directly responsible for the death of Crafter. Their trials were swift, and their punishment was referred to as being harsh. It was only on the next day, however, when Happy did not show up to the confessional that I would soon construct to get a better understanding of his perspective, that I realized what Imperium's leaders had done. Today was a specially allocated build day, where PvP was turned off. After the assassination of our leader, I was especially thankful to get a chance to relax and do what I love most, architecture. I ranked high in the order of architects within Imperium, and so I started by adding some finishing touches to my house from day 3. I then began to help with digging a massive moat for the surrounding area of the base, which had undergone some changes. For starters, the capital had been moved closer to the Iron Node, and while Sideris was still to be kept as its own town, the new building plans would exclusively revolve around it. Our next task was to begin designing a wall to go around the base. I pitched a design I had cooked up in a nearby creative world, but unfortunately it was shot down in favor of a brand new art direction to take our entire nation. After we were done, I decided to begin on a more serious and personal building project. One I would treasure for the rest of the server's lifespan. You see, after following Crafter's death, I had taken to a life of faith started by our friends in the nearby church known as Harvestspire. I found myself a man with a devout fear of the one true god, Skipolo himself. As such, to show my gratitude to the Almighty, I began construction on my very own church. I found a cool design to base it off of online, and got to work constructing, using nearby stones and building materials, and going for an entirely grey color palette. This project would only be partially completed on the day, however, as I would soon be kicked off to end the session. Here's a quick time lapse of what I got done on that day. Day 6. For me, today was another day of building. The rest of Imperium began on construction of the base's walls meant to house the entire faction. One person by the name of Meta instructed me and 3 others to go and collect the diorite that would be used to build the wall, and seeing as I wasn't doing anything else at that moment besides constructing my church, I got to it. After mining for a good hour at least, and collecting over 12 stacks of diorite, I offloaded them onto the group's chests and got back to building my church. I mined a few more of those funny rocks sprinkled around the server, and continued my work. While this was going on, however, just next to our Capitol building, a miniature war was being fought that resulted in nearly 30 people's deaths. At the time, I wasn't aware this battle was happening so close to where I was building, but apparently what had gone down was one of the nations at the center of the map, known as Polestar, had officially declared war on them by the nefarious terrorist organization known as Dutch Gang. Led by the evil Dutch Vanderland, they were a group consisting of the most skilled PvPers in the entire server. They would often shout southern obscenities at their foes, and were a major target of nations across the entire world, not just in the East. They had pillaged towns before, and laughed at the sanctity of human life. Polestar, being a fellow member of the NEU, which Imperium had now fully signed on to following the death of Crafter, meant that our nation's military had a responsibility to help assist in the war. Collectively, the groups rallied at Rinkai to gather diamond armor, and a short but deadly war commenced. How it managed to happen just off of our borders, less than 100 blocks away from where I was building the church, I had no clue. In the end, however, Dutch Gang was repelled and Polestar had been safely defended. This battle would not be the last time we would hear from Dutch Gang, as they would surely appear later to cause us further troubles. However, it was a victory for now. The NEU had proven themselves to be a powerhouse that could be capable of rivaling the remaining powerful factions on the server, such as Sarkovia, Hydra, and whatever remnants of Atlantis that remained after the assassination of Mudklip. Though my life was quiet for now, I felt something was missing from it, as I would soon come to be more involved with the nation's events as a whole. For now, however, one thing was clear. The glory days of the server were over. The happiest and most peaceful parts of the event were behind us. But thankfully, for our purposes, not the parts that would come to be the most memorable. Thank you for watching.
This song is the story of the master of the sword. The plots he made, the battles won all by his own accord. The story of a man who's both hated and adored. This song is the story of the master of the sword. He went down to Atlantis on his first day in the land. Went on to slay the emperor, a bloodstain on his hand. The people were enraged, of course the guards, they all but fled. And thus the world declared that they all wanted Sword's head. He got kicked out of